we contribute to our mental state, emotional state, our well-being. We're always contributing. We're always giving, we're always making available, we're always making room for whatever is happening. Allowing things to happen, basically, with the amount of attention that we give it. Whatever it is, anything that pulls us, anything that we have a tendency of allowing into our lives, into our sphere of experiencing, it has to go through us. We are the gatekeepers, ultimately, to what we think about, what we feel, how we behave, how we act, whether we're on our own, surrounded by others, in our personal space, when we're all on our own, or when we're surrounded by society, out in public, no longer in private settings. We have everything to do with the whole entire experience that's going on, that we're picking up. This might seem like, for some, it might seem that it is redundant. It's not, yes, I know that. So? But we need to take a moment to look at how much that involvement truly is, to bring about a sense of happiness to us, for us. Because what we tend to do is we are carrying over the sentences, the emotional sentences of yesterday, of yesteryear, of the previous moment, how we felt earlier, how we reacted towards something. While the tune in the mind, in the heart is, the melody in the heart or the mind is, well, I'm supposed to feel like this. I'm usually responding to situations like this. It's very similar to when you're upset and you go to sleep. When you're upset about something, at something, unhappy or worried about something. Basically not a good state to be in. And then the next morning you wake up. When you wake up, initially it is not the way you went to sleep. There are those few milliseconds, in some cases even a minute or so, and then that tune I was mentioning, that melody, emotional reminder, if you will, comes in and says, hey, we're supposed to be upset at this. We, as in, remember yesterday, last night, when you're about to put your head on the pillow and it was so difficult because I can't believe they did this to me, or I can't believe this is happening, etc., etc. You just contributed to the alteration, to the changes that you're undergoing. When you woke up, it was a fresh, brand new day. But maybe the concerns you had as you were going to sleep the night prior were 100% valid, such as going to an important meeting and you're going to have to face some very difficult, challenging situations. But the day started fresh. The approach with which you could tackle those problems of that new day don't necessarily have to be playing to the same tune as yesterday. But the problem is we try to carry over, just like in math, we carry over the number, right? When you're doing, let's say, multiplication and things like that, arithmetic. We carry over the emotional state, the mental state. And this is where sanya, in Buddhism we call it sanya. Sanya are basically the perceptions, the memories, the emotional ties we have to how we think. They're like the Lego pieces that we like to use. We never question them. They're like those building blocks of newer concepts, newer reactions, newer situations, newer behaviors, which they're not that new when you look carefully at them, that are formed out of these boxes, Lego pieces of imaginings, me thinkings, which in Pali is called manjana. So you see, it's like whatever we are contributing to our day. Meanwhile, the eyes are opening, obviously. You're looking around and you're seeing other people in your life, in your room, in your house, in your surrounding, in your office. People who sent you emails, let's say, you're seeing, these people exist and they're the ones who are causing me this, tumultuous state of affair that I have to deal with. So meanwhile, what's happening is the blood pressure is rising. Meanwhile, your concerns for the day and for the rest of the week and maybe your life are continuously accumulating. So in essence, the person then, in their mind, is seeing that they are on the receiving end of all this tragic or demanding circumstances. So I have to simply be like in baseball, there's the batter, the one who has the bat in hand, the stick, the wooden, to hit the ball with, basically. So you're constantly having to respond to life situations. That puts an extra pressure every time you're breathing, because you're not going to be present to the breath. You're not going to be present to the fresh new day that just began. So this is what is also meant by sannyas run our lives. In fact, sannyas ruin our lives. So in a sense, it's very much like listening to a radio station. Nowadays, it's like, especially with the programming of radios and things, you just put the coordinates, the station, and it just goes there. But we don't, we used to have radios, I'm sure there are some still, where you have to turn the knob and you have to find that right sweet spot of broadcasting station. Sometimes they're very faint. My dad had had these old, wooden, half metal radios that he would listen to, and they had so many different channels on. I guess they were from the Cold War era. So you had Eastern Europe, this, that, stations, and then I would just play with them. So I wouldn't understand most of the languages, but I would be surprised because the range of the scanning stations, I guess, broadcast stations, would be maybe about 10 or 12 centimeters long, but on it there would be tens of different stations marked. And then I would be carefully like turning the knob, and I would just get that sweet spot I was mentioning, and I would hear the broadcast station clearly. And then I would look just to test it. I would just turn it ever so gently, slightly to one side, moving my thumb down or, my index the other way. And then all of a sudden it would be gone. Finding peace is similar to that. Finding your day is similar to that. I was contributing to the experience of listening to a broadcast station in a clear, crisp fashion. How I moved my fingers and the knob, therefore, in either way. How fast I was moving, because I would then, roll the knob between my fingers, and it would just go whoop from one side of the broadcast, I guess, the spectrum, all the way to the other. And it was just like gibberish. That's how it would come out. And a lot of static. But then I was like, wow, look at that. Look at that. If I could just go slower and slower and slower, and just like be very careful, and boom. It's like in those movies where you go, where it's like a thief. I remember watching them in the past, where you have a thief trying to break into a safe, and they go, shh, quiet, 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 and they put their ears against, their ear against this metal, steel, I guess, door of the safe, and they carefully, sometimes they have to use a stethoscope to hear the tiniest little faint clickings that's going on inside. And then, boom, it just opens. It is like that. Gaining access to a wonderful day. To break free from the miseries of yesterday. Because essentially life is giving you a new day. Now, of course, we're not completely, we're not oblivious to what happened yesterday. Somebody might have really done some damaging things to you. So today, you're not going to go ahead and give them another opportunity to go ahead and complete the mission. In a sense, to ruin you. Or you've made some major mistakes yesterday, and you're not going to carry over those lines of thought or action. For that, I've always found it extremely useful to make a list of things. So going on the theme of, sleeping with so much in your mind or on your mind, sometimes when you give yourself, when you accommodate, as I was saying, when you're allowing the reality of the moment to take place, there's a sense of humility. Just like there had to be a sense of humility and curiosity, but not impelled or pushed by curiosity too much, energy too much, where I would push through the radio knob too fast. So I had to be humble. Listening to the Dhamma is like that. Practicing the Dhamma is very much like that. Otherwise, what you would be doing is you would be using the blocks of Lego, of sannyas, of perceptions, of how you think this should mean, underlined, ruining whatever message that might have been there for you to benefit from. And that's why a lot of people really today cannot listen to Dhamma. Not because the Dhamma is not available, it is very much available. It is as available, if not more now, than at the time of Lord Buddha, as surprising as that may sound. Because you have the whole collection of teachings that Lord Buddha taught, not even counting whatever came after, the other, traditions and things. Just Lord Buddha's teachings in such a massive quantity, in such a saturated way, thick chunks of it, whether it's online, whether it's in books, than a person may have encountered while visiting Lord Buddha. Most of the listeners to the teachings did not hear this much because there were no recording devices. There was no YouTube, for example. There were no MP3s, there were no videos, there were no books, because you are not allowed to write sacred teachings down, even for safekeeping. So what the best way to carry over the teachings, to keep it, there preserved for posterity, for the future generations, was in the form of repetitions, in the form of recitations, in the form of monastics. And they had the closest access to Lord Buddha's teachings, of course, in most cases, repeating it to each other. And that's how it was preserved. So we have so much today, but how much of it is it really accessible? Meaning accessibility here. Remember I said the word, we are the gatekeepers. We are the gatekeepers of what comes in. If I kept on moving the knob of the radio left and right, left and right, left and right, which I've done as a child, I used to do that, there were no, MTVs or anything like that when I was growing up. People today what is that even? But when I calmed down, when I was curious really, but when I was really, really approaching it with humility, then I would be able to hear words. I would hear accents. Let's say if it was English, I would hear different accents of English, different parts of the world. If it would be, Russian or Arabic or something like that, or French, or some other European language, I would hear it. I wouldn't know what it is, but I could tell the difference between how crisp the sounds were, enunciations of words. There was no static. And some stations were very faint. So it's the same thing that's happening when you are encountering your day, because your emotional states that you carry over will be like the static. But then as you're switching over, because the mind doesn't like to stay on one thing, especially if that one thing is like the clean slate. Okay, we get it, I get it. This is this is terrible, what happened. But let's breathe. Especially if you've been exposed to the Dhamma, if you've listened to anything from the teachings of Lord Buddha. Okay, fine, this bhikkhu, this teacher, or I personally have experienced this, that time when this happened. Let me just breathe and just kind of go back to square one, start afresh. But the mind will come in and try to seek delight from some pleasure or dwell on some pain. That switch over, before it happens, it's, these are different states, but in between these, between these different states, that is, mind, emotions, there are these narrow, narrow ridges, narrow, narrow spaces between one thought and the other. Essentially, this is why we practice mindfulness meditation, to become comfortable enough to slow things down where you start to notice these gaps. And what you're switching from one thing to the next, what that is, or those different things that it's like a hot potato being tossed from one hand to the other, are the results of sanya. Because the mind is not aware of what's taking place. So humility is not just for the sake of humility, but humility to have a position of curiosity, but softness in your attitude. To say, yeah, but you're also practicing wisdom to say, well, my life isn't all that. I'm just not aware of the switchover. I'm not just aware of how fast, because it's going so fast, from one mind moment to the next, one mind moment, one emotional state moment to the next. But when you are slowing things down, you're saying, okay, that happened to me last night. This is a new moment. Remember those few seconds I said when you wake up? Before your sanyas come in, before your memories start barging through the door of your mind, reminding you of all these horrible things that you have to deal with. I'm exaggerating, of course, but it starts from there. It's like an avalanche. You now are gatekeeper, right? You are now allowing in only wholesome states. Why or how? By simply focusing on that space in between these thoughts. It's like the interstice. It's like the intermission. It might be very, very faint. That is your broadcast station. That is my, effort at trying to draw some analogies or similes in connection to what's happening emotionally to you. Which means that every millisecond, every moment is in your hands. At least how you behave towards them. You will have to go, if you have to go to that very unpleasant meeting. But it doesn't stay unpleasant. Even on the way to that meeting, you're going to start to notice the roses on the road. Or the smiles on the road that you see. You're going to see somebody over there saying good morning to you. You're going to notice that, and you're going to smile back, and you're going to say good morning to you too. How are you? And suddenly what happens is you are creating those tiny little oases instead of being overly dominated by the thick clouds, gray, dark clouds of worst case scenarios. And this is how you're building for yourself new habits, new emotional states. And this, you can take it and talk about it in terms of diet, in terms of social relational dynamics, how you behave with others, as well as getting to the point where saying, no, I like this in my life, where I don't like this. And this is where the person takes charge of their life. By choosing to no longer use certain Lego pieces. Because you need to use some building blocks. Yes, I get it. But eventually you see that these sanyas, these perceptions are just that, perceptions. That you're borrowed, basically, based on some distant, in your past, experience. And you weren't like clear, you weren't a clean slate, you weren't in a perfect state of calmness when that emotional state happened, because it was an emotional state. Probably you were in pain, probably you were experiencing pleasure, So there was a bias towards that experience. You weren't neutral towards it. But that went and became inputted data in your mind as this is how things are. This is how they occur when you have these circumstances. What I'm referring to here are associations that the mind loves to do. That's how we recall information, by the way. That is how you basically learn languages. Learn how to navigate, all through associations. So your senses, whether it's your eyes, your tongue, your nose, your ear, etc., they lock on to bits of data that are happening in your life at that moment, but while being completely smudged, brushed over with the paintbrush of emotions, irrespective of what the life is teaching you or saying to you or expressing to you. Because perfect example or litmus test to this would be somebody next to you who comes from a different emotional filter or paintbrush, experiencing the same reality but registering it as something totally different. That's why people, when they're asked about a certain incident where they were witnesses to, sometimes they will give totally different information, even though they were there both at the same time, experiencing, so-called experiencing the same thing, but they weren't. Because they were gatekeepers to their own reality. So in essence, you are creating your own reality. But it's not a fake reality. That's where positive psychology and just keep saying to yourself affirmations are not going to take you far. You will fail. Because you are the main gatekeeper. Again, how much are you accommodating in your behavior, in your thinking? So especially when we come to the teachings, how they can help us. And that is why, unfortunately, with all of the data that we have, all of the instructions, all of the resources we have of Lord Buddha's teachings, and how they can help humanity and other beings, unfortunately, only tiny little bit of it goes in. Even though we might think that we're getting in a lot, but we're not. Because what goes in, what really is being used up, what is really being applied in your life, that is how it will be reflected as, yes, you understand this much of the Dhamma. But why stop there? Because the Dhamma can take you straight to Nibbana, to freedom. Freedom from some mediocre looking, superficial level pain, but pain nevertheless, suffering nevertheless, as well as the pain of illusion and ignorance, of the kileshas, of the defilements, of greed, lust, hatred or anger, and delusion, moha. Willful ignoring of this state of avidya, of not wanting to know, because you have to be using the knob, the radio knob, the scanner, in such a way where you are doing it with care. And your day is that whole spectrum. You can gain so much from your day, irrespective of what happened yesterday and the days before. So, learn what you're accommodating, learn what you're letting in, see and take ownership of that. And if it's harming you and your progress, stop it. You can always stop it so long as you're alive in this body. Despite the fact that you might think you're absolutely, completely, at the mercy of your circumstances, that is not true. So watch between those switchover moments of your thought. Now you were thinking about this, you were completely sucked into this thought or emotional state, and then something happens, something triggers, and all of a sudden you're thinking about something else. Don't just go ahead and pick up that hot, potato or run with it. No. Be curious to know, like, wait a minute. When this switchover happened, I went over something, a gap, the interstice I was saying, the intermission. It's not a one stream of thoughts. No, 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 no. It looks like that. It's just like looking at a classic animation. It's moving at 24 frames a second, let's say, the animation, the movie, feature film. Typically, that's the speed of each frame, 24 of them in 1 second. But it looks like it's a movie. So your thoughts seem like they're a movie, but they're not. So mindfulness or meditation, properly done, is going to stop them because it's simply a frame. It's not a movie. So mindfulness turns on the switch, the light switch. Boom, you get, oh, that is when you rest and come down and look at, okay, so it's not that terrible. That's when you are listening to the broadcast station that is coming in so clear and crisp, and you're understanding life for the first time. That's where joy waits for you. That's where peace waits for you. That's where freshness and life waits for you. That's how you're able to see the person smiling to you, wishing you a wonderful day. And you do the same. That's life. The essence of life. To gain freedom from suffering.